Chris Phillips is here, and that means it's time for QB1. And Chris, we're talking about Justin Herbert, who has a rib injury, apparently. I mean, how should the Chargers kind of manage this moving forward?
I'm sure, really weighing the pros and cons of it. I know that they would be definitely taking Herbert's advice, or I should say his opinion, and Herbert will tell them he's good to go. He's going to play. He's a tough gamer. He's definitely somebody that wants to be out there with his teammates and help them win games. So if they're following his advice, I would not be surprised to see him out there. They might want to consider big picture wise what they want to do with their franchise quarterback. Having him be out there and being open to taking some hits is a recipe to add more injury to his already injured ribs. So looking at a big picture, they might want to consider just having him rest or sit out, or if they really do want to have him play, then they need to tailor their offensive game plan to get the ball out of his hands quicker. Probably a little shorter passes, a little more rhythm, quick rhythm type of plays, dumping the ball off to Austin Eckler, and honestly just running the ball a little bit more. They do have a good offensive line, so that shouldn't be a concern, but they should definitely take this injury with some seriousness.
You mentioned him earning the distinction of being the team's franchise quarterback. There's been so much buzz around him this early in his career, and of course, protecting him moving forward for some of these nagging rib injuries that could linger and turn into long-term problems is going to be paramount for the team. Is he a quarterback that can win that big game? Has he proven his ability to show up in the biggest of moments, or is that still to be determined to a certain extent?
I would say for anybody who's asking that question, really just, don't confuse hasn't won it yet with can't win it. You have to be able to be in those games in order to have the opportunity to win them. In college, he did go 2-1 in bowl games, which that's a pretty good measure of big games for him. Now, granted, they didn't go to any BCS title games or national title games or whatever colleges wanted to call their playoffs and title games or anything like that. So he does have a win record in those big games. There are some instances in regular season games that were considered big that maybe he didn't have the best performance or the team didn't come out on top on, but he does definitely have the abilities to win games and lead his team to victory.
And how far do you think he can lead them in terms of a playoff run this season?
In terms of playoff run, I mean, he's got to get in there first. At this point in his career, he has yet to make the playoffs, which is kind of surprising considering how well thought of he is as a young quarterback. The fact that he hasn't made the playoffs is a little bit surprising. Now, when you consider the division he's playing in, he does have to go against Patrick Mahomes, who is arguably the best quarterback in the NFL right now. That does kind of make for some sense as to why Herbert hasn't been in the playoffs just yet. I mean, Mahomes is going to probably be in the playoffs every year now until he retires. So Herbert's always going to have to try and win the division or, somehow sneak in the wild card because Mahomes is going to be king of the AFC West. It is also interesting that during Herbert's career, he only has one winning season, and that was last year. But that was, they went 9-8, I believe. So, it was a little bit concerning that there was an expectation for him and his team to take a year to leap, and they did, considering the record they had the year prior. But it's not what Charger fans were necessarily expecting. I'm sure they were hoping that the Chargers would make the playoffs. So as of right now, he definitely has the talent around him to get the team to the playoffs.
It's interesting you mentioned all these things about him not making it to the playoffs and not proving himself on the biggest of stages at the NFL level, which is a different level, despite the fact that he's, really proving some people wrong, I think, about how they perceive maybe Oregon football. But all that to say, it's interesting that so many people are firmly in his camp and see him as one of the next elite quarterbacks when there are a couple of check marks that need to be checked off. I mean, is that surprising to you? Where do you sort of rank him among his draft class and what he's done so far at the NFL level? I feel like whenever people talk about him, they speak so glowingly of him, and rightly so. I mean, he's such a talented kid, but there are a couple of things that, to your point, he hasn't done yet that you don't really hear as much about as you do some of these other young kids.
Yeah, he's definitely right up there with being in consideration for being the best quarterback to come out of the draft in 2020. Obviously, Joe Burrow is the main guy right now. He's just fresh off of a Super Bowl appearance. There's a lot of expectations that Burrow could take the Bengals back this year or at least another couple times in his career. So Herbert definitely has some work and some ground to make up, considering he hasn't been in the playoffs just yet. They haven't won the division or anything like that. But again, Herbert does have a winning season. The Chargers are looking to make that 2 winning seasons in a row. Herbert had a very fantastic rookie year. He holds the rookie records for touchdowns, yards per game, most 300 yards in game, most 300-yard games, and then also completion. So the talent is clearly there for him to have these kind of sustained success in the NFL season and to get the Chargers into the playoffs and to get Herbert to be considered the best quarterback to come out of the 2020 draft class.
Is he changing the perception about what might be possible for a player from a school like Oregon?
I think so. If you look at the recent history of college football players to come from the University of Oregon, and even kind of go back, 10 years beyond recently, there is a perception and a stigma that Oregon players are really just good college players, and they're a product of their system. They don't translate well to the NFL. I believe before Herbert, the last 2 players to come from Oregon who actually had any sort of NFL success were Patrick Chung and TJ Ward. So that tells you all you kind of need to know. I mean, Marcus Mariota was thought to be the next great franchise quarterback. It was a lot of consideration whether he should have gone number 1 overall ahead of Jameis Winston just because Marcus was so good. Now we see Marcus is on his 3rd team in his career, and right now the perception from Marcus is that he's kind of just a placeholder until their newest rookie quarterback, Desmond Ridder, is able to take over. So there's definitely a perception that Oregon players aren't good. I would say Herbert is really setting himself apart from the rest. As I mentioned already, he's holds some rookie records, which is pretty impressive, and he's already doing quite well in the NFL so far. So he's definitely got the talent and ability to shed that stigma.
And no question in my mind that he is the player that this franchise can build around.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. He's got all the tools around him. He can run. He's mobile. He's got a very strong arm. He's accurate. He can make all the throws from the pocket. At this point, I would say it's really maybe just kind of fine tuning some things and really getting more familiar with NFL defenses and understanding that not every throw has to be a big time completion or not having to be a touchdown. Really, just kind of necessarily taking what the defense gives you and just move the ball down the field, get some points on the board. And if the drive doesn't end up in points, at least you can put the ball back in, bad starting territory for the opponent and let your defense go to work and hold them and kind of just play that field position game if necessary. So he's got a lot of things going in his favor. He's already showing signs this year of having a great season.
QB1, Chris Phillips, Justin Herbert. Chris, thanks.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more QB1.